All right, we're going to call to order the February 19th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council Redevelopment Successor Agency and Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight will be led by Council Member Oscar Villegas.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our real property negotiator regarding the property at 427 C Street and 317 5th Street, to confer with our legal counsel regarding Campanelli versus the City of West Sacramento, and also existing litigation with United Christian Centers, and to confer with our labor negotiator regarding negotiations with the West Sacramento Police Officers Association. And on all items, no actions were taken. All right, so we're going to proceed next to item 1A, and just for the those members of the audience that are here for our I presume send-off of Councilmember Villegas, we're going to take item 1A in two parts, because it'll be under that item that we take up its departure. So we're going to hear regular general presentations on public on matters not on the agenda that also have nothing to do with Oscar Villegas first. We'll then dispose of items 1B and item 1C on our agenda. Then we're going to return back for the commemoration of Mr. Villegas's impending transition. All right, so on item 1A and all other items, we do ask that anyone wishing to address the council fill out a yellow card. Those cards are available at the front door, and turn the card into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use, and then we ask that all comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes so that everybody gets a chance to be heard. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that chart simply indicates which item we're currently considering. We recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause some anxiety or hives, and so we do ask that there not be any boos or catcalls, or, with one exception tonight, not applause or other demonstrations, and then we try to maintain a civil discourse in the chambers. When we get to our regular items, after items 1A, B, and C, we take the yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on the item. Once the staff report's completed and council questions or public testimony has begun, we don't take any additional speaking request cards. So if you want to speak on an item, the sooner you get the card in, the better, but certainly by the conclusion of the staff report on that item. I'd also note that the city manager has requested that we remove item 6 from the agenda this evening. Correct?
Actually, I think we just wanted to amend item 6. There was one.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So we will be later removing item 6 from the consent agenda. Let me just note our actual city manager. Well, actually, our actual city manager is sitting right there, but the one with the title is at home with the flu. So we wish Mr. Tuttle the best, and Mr. Ledesma, who I know is killing himself because he cannot be here this evening, is on an unavoidable work assignment out of state, and so it won't be with us tonight as well. All right, so we have a couple of requests to speak under item 1A, and again, if you're here to speak on the Villegas issue, then we simply ask that you defer a little bit. But the first is by Bill Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will Lowell, West Sacramento for the record. And I noticed since our new bus schedules came into effect, why I'm still getting passed up about a third of the time by the number 42 between between the Transit Center and Harbor Boulevard on West Capitol Avenue. Either way, they're too full. They don't have room for me in my little shopping cart. They usually don't have room for anybody else either. And so I think we should seriously consider making that limited stop bus number 241 that serves our industrial park. Instead of just to have peak hour service, I think it should be elevated to an every other hour service, and giving potential job seekers better access to and from the jobs, a lot of which are going begging over there, and we can save money that way, and I think it would be a healthier situation all the way around. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowell. And Mildred Hoyt.
Hello. I came tonight to tell you thank you for this no parking signs. I'd like a little enforcement. And the car that sat over the weekend in front of that fire plug is not my favorite person. So, but thank you anyway for all the effort you made, and you made me feel better about the whole neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Horton. Thank you for bringing the issue to our attention in the first place. And thanks, Mr. Zombie, to Denix, who got right on it after you came. All right. Thank you. All right, item 1B is council communications and assignments. Are there any reports or the communications this evening? Mr. Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Yolo County Transportation District met in Woodland on February 10th. Just a couple items to make sure the council is aware. We get an update on the WX Freeway construction project and some of the major issues we may encounter as a result of some of the construction project on the 5080 corridor there coming up in May and June of this year. More to come on that. We received an update on the streetcar that seems to be moving along well, and I think, as the mayor is aware, some of the correspondence that we've submitted to the proponents on behalf of the Transportation District in light of some of the possible transportation circulation issues that may affect the district have been they've been elevated, and so they're well aware of our concerns, and they've reached out to make sure that we're part of the ongoing discussions as the arena project moves forward, that our transportation systems are incorporated as part of their bigger plan. I don't have anything else on. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to make sure that stays on the radar is the there was a request to submit an application for grant services to continue to support the city managers. I believe it's a city managers working group for the rail relocation project. That's something that's now getting some traction. It's been worked on, fits and starts with that rail relocation for many years. Now all the cities within the county, the transportation district included, is now interested in kind of continuing to keep that alive, and that has tremendous benefit for all of the cities, in particular here in West Sacramento. So there's some possible funding that may continue to support the work that's ongoing there. Earlier this evening, the Port Commission met, and we moved on one item, which also authorized the Port CEO to execute a letter of intent to negotiate the terms of a possible purchase and sale agreement for Site B at the port, which is along Industrial Boulevard. So that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Villegas. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The West Sac Housing Development Corporation met on February 12th. We had a routine update from the John Stewart Company, who manages all of the projects, and also discussed the Broderick Christian Center proposed deal that we discussed a little bit earlier. Air Quality Management District also met the same day, and there we basically had a 2013 ozone season review, and also discussed setting up a CAPS program, which basically sets thresholds for air quality emissions that allows projects to develop quicker under CEQA, or more streamlined. That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Villegas has informed me that he is stepping down as our representative to the Board of Directors for the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District Board of Directors, and so I'd like to appoint Mr. Christoph, who has been serving as the alternate, to serve as the primary representative on behalf of the city, and ask if there's concurrence with that appointment. All right, so without objection, that'll be the order. Mr. Villegas still had the largest of our workloads, so we'll have some additional changes that we'll need to make over the next coming weeks. Item 1C is appointments to boards and commissions. I had 2 of them this evening. And both of these applications have all been shared with the council. So for the Board of Appeals, I would like to appoint Ron Price. And to the Agricultural and Natural Resources Commission, Steve Peterson, both of whom have been at council on various topics in the past. Mr. Price is a resident of this neighborhood, and Mr. Peterson is a resident of the Washington Square neighborhood. So, all right. So, is there a motion to approve those appointments?
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Christoph. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Those appointments are approved. So, Mr. Villegas, I understand you have an announcement to make.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity, and I just wanted to just share just a couple thoughts. It's a bittersweet moment for me. I have, I started to reflect back on all the work, the tremendous amount of work, the dedication, the commitment by my entire family. From day one, my family has been very supportive of the work that I've done in my community, the work that I've committed to for years and years. And I thought I knew what I was going to say until I saw our former city clerk here, Helen Kanowski, who some of you may know, some of you may not. She swore me in after my very first election in 2000, and she was gracious enough to give me some. It wasn't advice necessarily; it was more of a threat. And as she was swearing me in, and she's over here by the pictures, taking pictures to make sure, and she's still here. She's been watching, and ever since the day she swore me in. Everybody else thought that she was whispering, nice thoughts as I sort of invoked on this new role. But what she really said, and nobody really knew this, was, "Oscar, you screw this up, and I'm going to kick your butt." And she made it very clear that she was going to be watching me all along. So thank you for giving me that stern warning. But it really has been an incredibly, an amazing run. 13 years on this city council. I could not have imagined where we would be today. I certainly worked very hard to try to imagine that and to live every day working for this community. I don't think anybody can possibly say that my commitment by myself, my family, my wife, my kids, Vincent and Elena, who sacrificed so much to see their dad gone during those formative years. They were 6 and 3 respectively, 5 and 2, 6 and 3 when we were actually campaigning, and they were there every step of the way. And they were willing to always know that Dad was out doing the good work. My wife, Katie, who pushed me beyond belief and had belief in me and had the capacity to recognize the good work that we could do beyond what I could recognize myself. And every day that I walk in this community, every day that I come out, every day that I come to work, I'm able to see that the work that we've done in this community has been an amazing transformation. I've always been told to leave things better than you find them, and I can honestly say, walking away tonight, I can say I left West Sacramento a better place than I found it. I think many can. Mr. Mayor, I don't want to step out from what the plan is this evening, so should I wait to sort of finish up my thoughts, or is this the right time?
Are you telling us you're leaving? I mean,
In a long, sort of roundabout way, I'm guessing I'm going to leave tonight, and so I don't. So should I continue on, or is there?
No, I just wanted to make sure I didn't, in case you had changed your mind.
No, I haven't changed my mind.
You were the one to say it, and not me
no,
or the city manager or the clerk.
I am going to say it.
All right. So, Ms. Richardson?
There is a mayor's proclamation there that you might want to present to.
There is, which I was going to do a little bit later.
Okay.
I actually would like to begin by inviting Mr. McGowan forward. He's legal. He filled out a card
Legal enough.
to lead off this evening.
Thank you. Well, I think this is, I want to congratulate you publicly again, Oscar, for this tremendous honor that the governor has bestowed upon you. I'm delighted that you're going to be taking up and taking off where I left this job off and taking it to new heights and new levels of representation for the community. I couldn't be happier, and I think in many, many ways, and I mean this as honestly as I can say, you will take the position of supervisor of District 1 to really a whole new level of great representation for the community. A lot of that has to do with just who you are, with the things you just mentioned about yourself, the support and the community you have from your family. I mean, it's in many ways the first family of West Sacramento. People watch how you folks operate in this community. It is an example, I think, that we should all strive to emulate. and you'll take that same level of commitment and dedication to your new position on the Board of Supervisors. And in many ways, again, you'll take it to a level that we haven't seen before. You're coming off the council, I think, is a tremendous plus for this community, and it's a real plus for the county itself. Your experience at the state and the whole juvenile justice and Department of Corrections field will be an invaluable experience and background as you help not just Yolo County and West Sacramento, but really the governor and the state deal with this AB 109 realignment in ways that I never could have done because of my lack of that experience. And I think your ability to represent West Sacramento in emerging issues such as what we're going to do in the Delta and how it will affect us, how we can take advantage of that situation, really tame that beast and have it work to our advantage is something that you'll be able to do really at a very high and proficient level. I couldn't be prouder, I couldn't be happier. But I must say, probably to channel the spirit and some of the language of Helen Kanowski, don't screw it up. Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The Learning Ladder poster? The Learning Ladder poster, is it here?
In front of me.
Oh, it is in
Yeah.
front, okay. See, these meetings are not totally choreographed. Do we have other folks who had been invited to speak?
I think they were just going to be coming up if they put a card in, was the plan. Or we could be a little more informal about it.
Informal? Relaxed? Not following our rules? No, we need to stick with them in this case. But I would like to invite Cindy Tuttle to come forward as another one of our former colleagues.
Thank you. I am thrilled that Oscar's going to come and be my boss. Woohoo! So I think, as you all know, I work for Yolo County. I'm the Intergovernmental Relations Manager. And, when I first came onto this council many moons ago, we won't say when, but many years ago, Mike McGowan was still on the council, and he left to become the supervisor. And it's just wonderful now that you're coming off this council to be the supervisor. And I've gotten to see the wonderful work that you've done here in West Sacramento, and it is true what you've said. You've truly left it better than when you got here. You all have, and that's a tribute to all the work that you've done, and I just hope that you'll continue that in Yolo County. We're thrilled. We can't wait for you to come. And I totally agree with Supervisor McGowan. This is a win-win, I think, for everybody working into the future. So thank you, Oscar. Thanks for the work you've done here. Thank you for the work that you're going to be doing coming in here next week, I guess, or is it next week?
Next week.
Awesome. So if you need anything, you got my number. Congratulations.
Thank you, Cindy.
All right, thank you, Cindy. We had a special presentation from the Universal Preschool for West Sacramento. Mr. Villegas has been our city's liaison to that board, taking over from Carolyn Castillo-Pearson, who just joined us, who did all of the founding work for Universal Preschool for West Sacramento. When she retired from the council, Oscar took that lead with gusto and has been a tremendous supporter and advocate, unrelenting in that initiative, which has achieved a lot of statewide recognition. And so the folks at Universal Preschool for West Sac and Learning Ladder wanted to make a presentation as well.
Well, standing before you are some of the most dynamic women that I've ever met. And I think they were the ones who brought the vision and initiative of Universal Preschool to light. And Oscar continued all that with his ongoing support. When there was times when we didn't really have a voice, he became our voice for us. And the Learning Ladder, which you have a little poster here in front of him, is only a small subset of the children that have benefited from the Upper West Sac program. There's 48 children out of 700 that have benefited, and we owe a real debt of gratitude to you for that. So we just wanted to give our own personal thank you for doing that.
Okay, well, I wasn't prepared for this. I just walked in, and first I just have to say I am just so excited about what's happening on our Board of Supervisors with you stepping in there. I can't think of a better person that will continue the marvelous tradition that Mike leaves us. I am so appreciative of the fact that you have held on to the vision for universal preschool and for just quality preschool here in West Sacramento. I think even more so now, as I have 3 grandchildren that are in preschools here in West Sacramento. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you for this and for all the other incredible things that you have done for this community. You leave quite a legacy. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I'd like to thank you as the Director of Early Learning Services for just your incredible guidance on as the Chair of the Board for Upper West Sac for the entire time that I've been here. And I do have to say, when I stepped into this position, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work. We have a lot to do. And I think probably the very first time that we had an executive board meeting and I found out you were the chair, I was like, all right, we can do this. So thank you so much for all of your guidance. It's going to be tough, but we're going to take the reins now. Thanks.
Thank you, Justine.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to present a proclamation in a moment, a mayor's proclamation, because we couldn't vote on anything because he hadn't actually resigned. But I did want to say a few words before turning over to Mr. Villegas. 13 years is a long time. For 13 years, actually, 3 of us have sat at this table together. I mean, it's a weird way to think about it, but the majority of this council has been stable for the last 13 years, and what an incredible 13 years it has been in so many ways. And I on my own Facebook last night, I posted a long list of things that had happened since Oscar was elected, and the responses were, appropriate about the awe of his contribution. But there's always a couple who are like, well, he didn't do that. He didn't do that one. He didn't do that one. As though it just happened. But I think in so many ways it speaks to the kind of leader in our community Oscar has been, that he never cared about who got the credit for anything. Oscar never issued a press release in his life, I don't think. Didn't hold a press conference, didn't attach his name to anything. He just wanted it to get done in any way possible. I wouldn't be in this job right now if it weren't for Oscar. I probably would have left the council a long time ago. Oscar was the one that said, you know what, this system where we have a mayor for 1 year at a time and nobody in the outside world knows who the mayor is and puts us at a disadvantage compared to Sacramento, we need to fix that. Well, who was like next in line to be mayor after that at that point? It was Oscar. Oscar is the longest serving member of the West Sacramento City Council to never have been the mayor, because he uniquely said that we as a community need to do different. We need to be more strategic, and it didn't. The thought it may have crossed his mind. It never appeared to cross his mind here that he was making a sacrifice that in other cities people just wouldn't do. But it's been that way on every single thing, every single topic, every single issue. He got here and he was asked to vote on and help to manage the process of us joining the regional sewer system. Which sounds like a very mundane, boring topic. At the time, it was not. It was a firestorm issue that packed not this chamber, but we were in the temporary city hall down on Halyard. It packed the room with folks who were worried that we were giving up our sovereignty and all this. But it needed to be done to save our citizens money, not just then, but forever. And it was a huge win. That was one of the first choices and first votes he had to cast. But over and over and over again, he said, "What's the right thing for West Sac? I want to hear what this one of our collective bargaining agents has to say. But ultimately, what's the right thing for West Sac? I want to hear what the chamber has to say. But what's the right thing for West Sac? I care what Senator Boxer thinks we should do. But what's the right thing for West Sac? Always, what's the right thing for West Sac? Because he would say, I'm going to live here forever. My kids grew up here. They're going to stay here. Their kids are going to grow up here. What is the right thing for this community? And over and over and over again. And I said this at Mr. McGowan's celebration downstairs, but one of those defining moments was when the casino promoter from Florida came to town, and the casino got interim approval in the 2000 and something election, not by the voters, but by the council the night before the election. And a lot of us were deflated that this has happened, and I know Cindy was, and Mike was, and others in the community. But it looked like it was over. It was done. The vote was taken. The guy from Florida was taking it to the bank, and it was going to be finished. And regardless of what you thought about it, at the time, Oscar said, no, this is not right. It's not the right thing for the community. And so he started like circulating these petitions, standing in front of Safeway and Rayleigh's to get people in the rain, because this was in December, in order to get it overturned. He had no hope to make it happen. He believed that somebody had to take a stand. And so he was that person. And Mike McGowan, in the press would say, "Good for Oscar, I agree with him," and then Oscar would be all by himself at the supermarket in the rain, collecting those signatures and putting his heart out on the line. And believe me, you wouldn't know it now, but back then there were very powerful interests who wanted that casino and had, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's, swore to Oscar they'd bury him, and he did it anyway. Today, as most folks in the community know, that site is where IKEA and the River Point Marketplace is. It's the most important economic development thing that has happened in the city, maybe ever. And it only occurred because Oscar stood up and said, "No, what we need next to Broderick and Bright is not gambling. What we need is places to shop in our own community, so you don't have to cross the river to get necessities or to get Swedish furniture." And that's the kind of person that Oscar has always been. But he's also been on the council the person that cares about every person in the community, every detail, and particularly every child in the community. And you certainly heard about that in the comments that were made by the Universal Preschool folks. But when Oscar first ran, it was, "I want to be a council member for families, for youth." That was his focus, and he never let up on that. He pushed hard for the construction of the recreation center, for all the youth leagues, for every park. He was always, an advocate. He did the whole fireworks ordinance just to get some, additional money for youth activities. Just at every step of the way, him and certainly his family, and Katie was there too, at every step, pushing to be the voice of kids and families on the council, and that has been so important. As the city has grown, it's not just about the great buildings. It's not just about the great Riverwalk. It's about the programs and the community feel and what we do for the kids in this place. And so it's been a tremendous honor to serve with him as he's led in that respect. And he's made the council and city government more accessible. I joke with him that people like to come to me if they want to figure out how to build a 13-story building, but if they want to go have a beer, they're going to go to Oscar, right? Because he has been the accessible face of, yes, while the mayor's busy in the White House doing some big thing, the fire hydrant is uncorked at the corner of Sarderville and Linden. Okay, I'm going to get on that and get that thing fixed. Right, and our city council only works because there's 5 different people each of us bringing something different to the table, and that Oscar's attention to everyone's problem in the city is his problem until it gets solved, and that caring, that accessibility has made our city, even as we've rapidly grown and had all these successes, it's still been a small town personal feel to the way that city government works. So I've just been really proud to serve with Oscar through all 13 years is a long time, and through a lot of challenges, but to see the amount of success in the community and then to go around town and to see the pride that people who grew up with Oscar or whose kids are in soccer with Oscar's kids or whatever, just the amount of intense pride that they see that he has helped to create in our community, but that he also represents. He didn't grow up as a kid of privilege. He grew up with as the son of U.S. senators. This was not the path that Oscar Villegas was set on when he was a teenager, and I think I'm putting it mildly. I think just like it was at that same time, where we are today was not the path that West Sacramento people thought that we were on as a community, and Oscar's journey, his struggle, and then his triumph has been West Sacramento's journey and its struggle and its triumph. And so I'm so proud of him, so proud of you, Oscar. Good luck on the Board of Supervisors. Our community definitely needs your representation there, but what a tremendous legacy that we see on the ground and that we see in the daily lives of our community and in the culture and in the spirit of the city of West Sacramento as an organization. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm not going to read this proclamation because I already talked too long, but you can probably guess what's in it, and you'll have it hopefully in a place of pride at the county office to remind the county folks who you really are as a City of West Sacramento guy. But this is a proclamation on behalf of the city recognizing your dedicated service to the city of West Sacramento. So before you go, I want to invite other members of the council if they wish to make any remarks. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, thanks. I think Christopher is spot on. We're going to see a partner go to the county, which is really good. And having worked with you for so many years, of course, I'll miss your humor. I guess the mayor will have to pick up where you left off on that. But one of the things that I really appreciated on the council with you is just the level-headedness and the your voice of reason, because I think, our council is viewed as a council, I think, that works together with not a lot of drama, and I think you're really an instrumental part of that, your ability to look at things pragmatically, plus your background in criminal justice, juvenile justice, and children, and all the other issues you're involved on. It really makes my job a lot easier. We've all come through with wacky ideas here and there, and it's always good to have, someone be able to pin that to the ground, and someone who really has a firm ear on the ground in terms of the community. So I know this isn't goodbye. I know we're going to be working with each other, and again, congratulations. I'm really glad that we're going to have you on as a board of supervisors.
Great. Yep. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Mr. Kristoff?
Yeah, just a couple of words. I too would like to, first of all, congratulate you on your appointment. I wish you just good luck. I know you will do a good job. You'll do certainly as good a job for the county as you did for the past 13 years on this council. And I, for one, appreciate all of the hard work and effort that you and Katie and everybody has put in for the city of West Sacramento, because the city of West Sacramento is a better place for having you put in the 13 years here that you have done. So congratulations.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
We have one more. There's 5 of us, remember?
Oh, no. Oh, shit. He's laying down on the job? What's he doing?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Oscar. It's Chris. Hey, just wanted to say I am from San Diego. Obviously, I'm in San Diego. And sorry I can't be at tonight's meeting, your last council meeting. I just want to send a message to you to say thank you for all your service to the city for the past 15 years as a planning commissioner, then as a council member. I know personally I felt the impact of what you've done, what you fought for our community. I also want to let you know I appreciate much your mentorship, your friendship as being a part of the council the last 3 years. And I wish you all the best. Look forward to working with you on the Yolo County Supervisors. You're going to be great. The best thing about all this is that little candy jar that's sitting right in front of you right now is going to be a little fuller now that you're gone. So I appreciate you leaving me some candy before you leave tonight. But seriously, all the best to you. Have a great council meeting.
And good riddance, I think, was the
Yes,
last.
good riddance, I think is it.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I don't even know how to express things. It's been, as I said, it has been a great run, and I think, and you alluded to it, Mr. Mayor, earlier this evening. I think a critical moment for me, as simple as it might seem, but it really sort of shaped for me why I was here, was the evening that I was nominated to become the mayor. And as you alluded to, and I don't want to restate what you said, but I will in part. It was interesting. It would have been so easy to say thank you very much and accept the nomination and assume that role. And I'm sure that the story would have ended up quite different. But for me, I honest to God could see that my role was not about me. It was not about, it was much bigger than me in ways that I could have never known. And at that night, it was that night that I think I realized not accepting the nomination and recognizing that the momentum that we had, I was better off serving this community by not accepting that, because I really felt that my role and the way that I could contribute would not have been to become mayor. I think it put in place for me a better understanding of why I was here in a much bigger way, that this is something bigger than me. It's not about me. And I think that, and I slept really good that night. I really did. I went to bed right away, as I do most nights, right away. But that night I slept especially well, knowing that I could make the decisions that were good for this community, in the interest of this community, and sleep well, and knowing I didn't have to be point man. I didn't have to be the guy sending out the press release. I didn't have to be. That's not why I do this. In fact, it's in many cases quite the opposite. So that was a very critical moment for me. I feel so fortunate. It's all about timing, and I feel so fortunate I've had the opportunity to serve with my colleagues here on the council. What an incredible group of people to work with. I know, talking to other council members throughout the region and throughout the state, they are not as lucky. They are not as lucky, and they say that. Amazing staff. If I was wearing a hat tonight, I would absolutely tip it to our city staff. Carol, you've been here from day one. The city staff in West Sacramento are an incredible group of people. There is nothing they cannot do. There is nothing they cannot do. When challenged with the craziest of things, and I can tell you we bring some crazy stuff to staff, they figure it out. They make things happen. And they've stuck with us for these last few years that have been so difficult. We've cut and we've cut and we've cut, and staff stay with us, and they figure out a way to continue to do quality work day in and day out. I feel very fortunate to have the staff that we have here. So again, my hat is off to our city staff. I can't stress enough how incredibly important it has been, in part attributed to our success, to have continued, focused, consistent leadership that has vision and focus. And I don't want to downplay the truth of that. If you look over to the right and you look at those poster boards going from left to right, you will see each and every year we identify the top priorities of our community, and we stick to that. And it has been an exercise in discipline for this council, week in and week out, to not bring these crazy new initiatives, but to say, no, we voted, we've identified what the priorities are, and we're going to step out of the way and let our amazing staff take care of the work, and we'll circle back next year to see how we're doing. And if you look from left to right, you look at what we started to talk about nearly 13 years ago. I think we started doing this 10 years ago. It is an amazing laundry list, and just about everything on there has been accomplished. And if you drive around town, you'll see it. But I think the root of everything we've done, all of our success, is rooted in the residents of West Sacramento. Without your willingness to continue to put us in this position, certainly me, I'll speak for myself, to continue to vote and to support me in my elections, to come back to serve you, the voters of West Sacramento have had an amazing, consistent approach to saying, we're going to trust you to do the right thing, so go on up and do it. We're not going to show up every week in and week out and challenge you to change your priorities or to fix this or to fix that. We've put you in office, do the right thing, or as Helen says, we'll kick your butt. And that's very true. We have had the good fortune of having consistent voters in our community to say, we like the vision, we like the leadership, despite some tweaks here and there, but we've had that good fortune of having residents in West Sacramento pay attention to where we're going and know that if we continue to put the right people in place, good things will continue to happen. So if I was wearing a hat, once again, I would tip it to the residents of West Sacramento to say thank you, and thank you for the opportunity you've given me to serve you in the best way that I know how. And again, the laundry list, if you look from left to right, it includes new neighborhoods and shopping, childcare, recreation for kids, libraries, community college. I mean, the list goes on. And so I look forward to my next opportunity. I think I'm going to continue to bring it what I bring best. And it's a simple guy in a complex world, but I'm going to add that to the Board of Supervisors. I'm going to continue to work on the things that Supervisor McGowan has done, which is to create a good working relationship between the city and the county, because otherwise we're working at cross purposes and nothing gets done, and we know what happens when that's the case. So thank you all for being here. It's been a wonderful ride. I want to continue it, but on a different level, and I just say thank you.
mentioned your family. I don't know if Katie made it or not, but I did see. I know Katie's here. But she's been introduced here like a million times. Vincent's here. Is Elena here also? Yep. Oh, there's Elena and Vincent both have been part of this long journey as well. So, thank you. All right, so we're now going to proceed to our next agenda item.
Well, we had refreshments.
Oh, there's refreshments.
And there's 2 presents that you might.
Oh, there's more presents
Yeah.
and December end. Okay. It's the.
Well, this is a photo collage, Oscar, of just some of the highlights of some events and special moments that throughout your tenure. I think you'll notice there's the library and an event at a bicycle event. We try to capture some of the passions that you have, the opening of the Learning Ladder. And there's some young guys in there. I don't know who they are, but yeah, they kind of go back. So we tried to do that. And then I think the other thing we have for you is our standard issue West Sacramento goodie bag. Nobody leaves West Sacramento without a goodie bag, and so you have that's your West Sacramento goodie bag.
It's a survival kit.
Yeah.
I didn't see if there was a Mountain Lions tryout picture on that, but there should be. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute recess in order for Oscar to be able to just say thanks and to share a few moments with all of the guests and friends and neighbors that are here this evening, and then we'll reconvene.
And there's refreshments out in the lobby.
At 10, yeah, the refreshments are right next door, and then we'll reconvene at 10 till. Call the meeting back to order, and we're going to proceed directly to item 2, which is the presentation on the state water bond. Mr. Ambia, are you?
Hi. Good evening, Mayor Cabaldon, council members, soon to be former council member. Good luck to you, Oscar. This evening
Still with us. He has not resigned yet. He is legally voting tonight.
This evening's presentation on pending state water bonds will be presented by David Guy, who is the president of the Northern California Water Association, and Alex Tengalix with Yolo County. David's going to start the presentation with an overview of this legislation, so I'd like to go ahead and pass it on to him and get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Great to be here. I'm just going to give a quick kind of a flyover of the water bond. Obviously, right now, everybody cares about water. You know, a year ago, it was hard to get people's attention, but obviously things have changed, and obviously the city has a long and important history with respect to water being along the Sacramento River here. I think as folks generally know, there is a water bond that is currently on the November ballot. That was passed back in 2009 by the legislature, signed by the governor, and that has been extended twice. And so it is currently on. It's about a little over $11 billion bond. The conventional wisdom has been that that was too large of a bond, and that there has been a variety of discussions over the last several years about reducing the amount of the bond and trying to kind of recalibrate certain provisions of the bond. And that's, you know, essentially what is going on in the legislature right now. There are 4 bonds, at least 4. I think there will probably be others before the year is over. There is an Assembly bond, 1331 by Assemblyman Rendon. Of course, in the Senate side, local member Senator Wolk has a bill 848. And then more recently, a couple of San Joaquin Valley members introduced SB 927, and then SB 1445, Dan Logue has introduced a bond. So there are 4 bonds that are now, 2 of them have already started to move through the process. Assemblyman Rendon's bond and Senator Wolk's bond are moving, and in fact, Senator Wolk's bond today got out of her second committee, and I believe now is going to to be going to a third committee, the local government committee, as I understand it. So that is the kind of the lay of the land. I think the missing ingredient that, of course, everybody's asking is, where's the governor? And that is still the big question mark that we're all struggling with. And at least my view is that until the governor decides what he would like to do on this, it's just going to be a lot of talking, a lot of posturing, and all the things, of course, that go on to this. There again, the bond is on the November ballot, so the legislature has to take it off the ballot, or that will be before. I think it was safe to say that at least the signals from the governor's office before this dry cycle was that they didn't really want this bond on the November 2014 ballot. But now, of course, with the dry year, things have changed, and I think it's safe to say that he's at least keeping an open mind to that. But again, I sure don't know what he's ultimately going to say on this. And obviously, there's been some changes in leadership in both the Assembly and the Senate as well that are kind of underway, and that's going to have a big role in this. So I think the long and short of it is there's a lot still to be determined. Like most of these things, this will probably happen kind of last minute, which will be in the probably June, potentially July time horizon this year is when this will emerge in some fashion. Just by the nature of the process, that's at least my sense. From the Northern California Water Association, I think we have really honed in on kind of three things that we think are important in this bond discussion, regardless of the bill. The first is water rights and area of origin. Obviously, you have water rights and contracts that are very important, and we believe that having the legislature acknowledge that in the bond is very important, and all of the bond measures currently have language along those lines, current to, in fact, the bond that's on the November ballot. The second piece is storage. Most of the bonds over the last decade or so have not included much money for increasing water supplies, and the current bond has $3 billion for system improvements throughout the state that include surface and groundwater storage. And the current bonds, depending on the versions, have anywhere from $1 billion to $1.5 billion for that. Obviously, we would like to see that number closer to the $3 billion that is in the current bond. And then, at least from our perspective, we believe that migratory corridors are very important. That's migratory corridors for the Pacific Flyway. That would include things like the Yellow Basin, and migratory corridors for, of course, the anadromous fish, the salmon, of course, that move through the river system here. And we believe that having funding to improve both of those migratory corridors is important as well. So we are obviously going to be very engaged in this. Would welcome working with you, obviously, on this and your staff. We're very encouraged that Councilman Ledesma is participating in the WRA. I think that's been surely a good place to have him involved, and then having Pauline, I think, at the technical staff level has been, I think, a real plus, working with, of course, Cindy and the folks over at the county. So anyway, we look forward to working with you, and Alex will kind of provide a little more detail on some of the county's thoughts on the bond, and would sure be welcome to, or open for questions or any other thoughts that you have.
Great. Thanks, David. Alex?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'd like to thank you for having us here today to present on this issue. Yolo County has, we've been focusing on two major issues in the entirety of the water bond discussion, and that's been to ensure that the water bond in no way funds the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Yolo County has an ongoing concerns with the BDCP and its potential effect on ag land and in general, the county's ag economy and ag sustainability in our region. Beyond that, we're also focused on money for ag mitigation. Any component of the water bond, there's many components which could potentially take ag land out of production, whether that's for habitat restoration for mitigation efforts or for water projects, water conveyance projects, or other regional water infrastructure. And again, similar to our issues with the BDCP, we want to ensure that any state water benefits are not done so on the back of Yolo County and on the back of our agricultural economy. Through that perspective, we have taken a position on two of the water bond bills. AB 1331 we've taken and opposed unless amended. Assemblyman Rendon's bond does not include money for ag mitigation and the economic and related economic effects. And additionally, that bill does not include language which does not preclude money going to BDCP to the extent that we had hoped. We have taken a position on SB 848, Senator Woke's bill. Our position there is support and concept. We've been working with the senator to address a few of our main technical issues related to BDCP and strengthen the language there to ensure that no money from the bond funds BDCP. And additionally, we've been working on the final some minor technicalities related to ag mitigation and the funding available for those related projects. We continue to work with the senator and Senator Rendon on these issues, and continue to work with the legislator at large on this critical issue. So that's kind of our big focus and our big perspective on this has been largely ag-focused, BDCP, and ag mitigation. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have, and understanding as a city, West Sacramento may have a different focus on the water issues as opposed to the county, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, and if I'm able to, I'd be more than happy to defer to Mr. Guy or Ms. Tuttle.
Mr. Christoph and Mr. Ledesma are our primary water supply and management designees through both WRA and RWA. And then I have had primary responsibility with little help from Mr. Ledesma and Mr. Villegas on the Delta issues. So I think we've been up to date on many of those issues. Just in terms of today's announcement by the governor and the legislative leadership, that's related to, but not centrally about the bond. Do you have any other information to share with us on that you could while you're here?
I believe that's in relation to SB 731, Steinberg's CEQA bill. It was previously a CEQA bill, and I guess what they're looking to do is look to direct money from the prior bond, Prop 1E, and ensuring that money is used soon to address ongoing water needs in the state. Maybe Mr. Guy collaborate on that further.
Yeah, I think the announcement today with the governor and the pro tem and the speaker was obviously focused on the drought, and it's primarily short-term things that can be done very much in the short term, and a lot of those things were in the governor's budget, including some funding for some of the things that Alex mentioned, some drought, a lot of groundwater, those kinds of things, and so I think that's what is in play. It's still to be determined, obviously, what that looks like compared to the bond discussion. I think most people are seeing the announcement today is kind of the short term, how do we get through this drought today kind of situation. The bond is more of the long-term investment in these programs, but there's absolutely going to be some discussion on kind of how those two interface. So how about water rights? In the press release or the short statement, there was a little throwaway line about water rights, which you would know more about, but that we obviously have very, very aligned interests. Yes. We've seen some different language on that, so I'm a little nervous about that. But the press release sounded great. It said that we're going to protect water rights, but we're also going to enforce illegal diversions right now during this dry situation, which I think again is perfect and is something that needs to be done. If people are illegally using water, then that can't be condoned, obviously. But yeah, I think the specific language on that is obviously going to be something we're going to look at, and I suspect your county council and your water advisors will be looking at very closely as well.
Mr. Johannesson, Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson, excuse me.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there any discussion, you're talking about the infrastructure and about the city needs and the county needs, about the ammonia treatment that the Sac Regional sewer system is going to put in, and any contribution of those bonds toward that system?
I'm not aware of how in regards to that specific project, I'm not aware if the bond would fund that or not fund that. I think that may be up in the air. I'm not entirely sure about how, what specific project will be funded and through what category. But there certainly may be a potential, but to what extent, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bonds, there is money generally, I think $1 billion and at least a couple of the bonds for those types of purposes. So I think the SAC sanitation would be eligible for some of that, and obviously would try to do that in combination with some of the federal funds that they're seeking as well.
All right, great. All right, Alex, you survived your first council presentation. Congrats. David, thanks. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that's going to bring us to the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 9. Are there any items? So the city manager is requesting that we modify agenda item 6 so that the supervising civil engineer is left in the code and to remove the construction administration specialist. So if there's no objection to that, we'll consider that item as with those amendments. Other items for a separate question or comment? All right, so, and I have three, so we're going to pull 3, 5, and 8, because we have a request for public comment on 8. So item 3 is consideration of resolution 14-9, authorizing the submittal of an application to the State of California Strategic Growth Council's Sustainable Communities Planning Grant and Incentives Program for the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan Master Plan. Aaron, this grant has 3 focus areas in it, one of which is high-speed rail we're not eligible for. Do you know which of the other 2 focus areas this application will be filed under?
You know, I don't offhand, I'm sorry. It's
If you could let me know, this is not a quiz. We have a SACOG board meeting in the morning, and SACOG is contemplating an application as well.
Right. And we have coordinated with them, at least letting them know what we're applying for. We've provided a support letter, but I'll try to find that out tonight and let you know.
So we provided them a letter of support for ours?
For their application, we are supporting their application. We are also requesting a letter of support for ours from SACOG.
I'll be sure to get that tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you.
Is it the same category? Do you know?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I'll try to find out.
Okay, terrific. Thanks. All right, item 5 is an update on the animal services study. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yeah, I think, what is the, so what are we going to get next on this? I think, one of the issues I've had is there's been a number of complaints I've received of cats and cat colony growth in this city. And we've seen it in Sacramento. And basically, as we have people move in and move out of homes, they leave their cats behind. And we're starting to see colonies really grow in certain areas of town. I know in Brighton, Broderick, and in Southport as well. So when form would this come back to us?
Well, that's a good question. I think the plan at this point is the LAFCO staff is going to be doing an RFP to see what kind of responses they get to the proposal that's in here. If there is an identified problem with animals, we have the capacity to work with the current provider, the Sheriff's Department, and trying to address that situation. I hadn't heard of that particular cat problem yet, but I can certainly look into that. This is more of a long-range plan as to how animal services would be provided in the future. And the next step in this report is to do an RFP just to see what kind of responses we get and the cost for doing that.
Okay, yeah, because I know a lot of folks are taking their animals to SPCA and have them neutered, fixed, and brought back and released. Right. And there's really not a lot of support outside of possibly providing a trap to do that. And the hours at Yolo and Woodland are pretty limited, so it is a problem for a lot of people.
On the same item, on the animal study, so I sort of 2 sets of questions. One is on the animal services piece itself, or animal control, since I'm not a Davis resident. We've talked before about assuring that we've got the numbers are trued up in terms of our actual allocations, and so I just want to be sure. When I was reading it, it made it sound as though it sounds inflated in the sense that it incorporated the costs of various nonprofits and others into the overall calculation, and therefore what the budget is targeted that we would then be paying for, or the comparison is towards, is not what we're actually currently spending as the city, or what the actual revenues are for animal control or animal services, depending on your jurisdiction, but that instead it's based on what's currently being spent by all parties, including these non-governmental entities. Is that right?
Well, I think that had to do with the staffing pattern. I think the staffing pattern was trying to reflect what was being done by paid staff and volunteer staff, so they can get a recommended staffing level under the JPA model. But the $357,000 that we pay and the other jurisdictions is strictly for paid staff at the Sheriff's Department and associated expenses. It's not a prorated share of the SPCA or any of those other groups.
And so our direct costs would be affected in what way if we went to this approach?
This particular approach, it looks initially like the direct costs would almost be the same. And the hope is that over the long term, the cost would be decreased. Because there was some skepticism as to whether or not even initially the cost would be the same or slightly less, that's why some of the jurisdictions have wanted to do the RFP to actually get responses and find out if in fact those costs would be less or more, or where they would be lacking.
All right. And is there, so there's, under the structure, there'd be a JPA board, a manager's board. Is there any sort of other, when we set up the NCPHCP board, we also got saddled with all of these Davis-weighted advisory committees and other things that drove the costs through the roof, and the outcomes down to almost nothing. There's not any of that kind of structure in this, right?
That hasn't been discussed, but yeah, on the actual structure of the JPA, there's a proposed structure in here that was laid out in the report that was done by LAFCO. But that hasn't actually been voted on by anybody, but.
Yeah, I have a separate set of questions and concerns about that, but this is one of those kinds of issues where there are distinct cultural norms, but it just also has the potential to, it's a blend between being highly emotional and highly costly simultaneously. Right. And, and there's a balance to be achieved, and I mean, we have to be attentive to both those values and our capacity to pay, and that's one of the reasons why the HCP kind of went off the rails, was that connection got lost. And then we had to clean it up at substantial expense later, and so from the very beginning we have to design, and I think the attempt's clearly been made in here to do that, but we have to really stay on that. The JPA piece itself, I'm still, to me, that deserves its own, if what we're doing, which might make sense, was just the creation of a sort of master JPA, that we ought to have that, the elected officials around the county ought to have that, that's not it's not simply an ancillary topic in an animal control study. So that needs to be broached in a much more direct way, because there's a lot of issues around that, and I get that there's been an attempt in this recommendation to deal with one of the concerns around the proliferation of JPAs is that there's only so many meetings that we can all go to with Woodland City Council members, every single day, and have our own jobs and our families and everything else. So that deals with that, but it deals with it essentially by saying, we won't really use the elected policy makers to make policies so much. We'll just bring you together once in a while, and then the actual work will get done by a board that's comprised of city managers. That might be the right approach, but it is sort of in a democratic society, that is a shift towards how we handle governance, and it deserves its own discussion. It also it deserves discussion by the elected policymakers of the jurisdictions together, not simply as a staff recommendation. So I appreciate the work that's been done on this. I think it's definitely improved from before, but I wouldn't be prepared to support moving forward with this JPA model just in the abstract, just based on animal control.
Your comments are similar to what was made about a year ago when the LAFCO director came and talked about the umbrella JPA. Yeah. Those have been conveyed, and there is no recommendation that's being made tonight because of that. We wanted to bring back to the council the whole picture, but I hear what you're saying about wanting to discuss the merits and the policy issues relative to JPA separately.
Yeah, I think staff's taken as far as they can. I mean, so the other solution that was developed, which I thought was creative, which was to layer this with LAFCO, and then have LAFCO adjourn and then reconvene as this group, and every city would have a seat on this group. But the problem is with that sort of arrangement is because we're not all on LAFCO all the time. I think we're not on LAFCO right now, for example, or we're on now. We won't be on in a year. Then in that year, so LAFCO will have a full agenda. It'll have its whole meeting, and then there'll be a meeting of this JPA. The sole purpose will be to receive the report of the auditor or something. And I mean, realistically, a council member, to have somebody drive from here to Winters or Woodland for that is going to, that's not going to happen. That's either not going to happen, or it's not an appropriate way of doing that business. So I think it was a valiant attempt, but those are the kinds of things that we would think about if we're actually asking the elected policymakers to engage in that. So I think the staff's taken as far as you all can, and we need to convene an inter-council working group with the Board of Supervisors around how to deal with some of these issues. So. Okay. All right, and then item 8 is consideration of update on the homeless transient public safety actions, and we had one request for public comment on that from Jeff Lyon.
I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Washington Neighborhood Group. Initiating the public safety plan being reviewed tonight as item agenda number 8 is the right thing to do. It will help protect both the public safety and the property of West Sacramento residents and businesses, which should be the #1 goal of this city council. I haven't had a chance to review your strategic plans, but I hope that at the top of each it would be protecting public safety. Because what good would it be to have all the streetcars, stores, shopping centers, and hotels if 100% of the citizens of West Sacramento do not feel safe in their neighborhoods day and night? The safety plan for review tonight was developed by, quote, multiple city departments and the city attorney's office. As with the recently adopted homeless action plan, the biggest mistake made with both of these plans was not including the most knowledgeable and important stakeholders in the process. The residents of the Washington neighborhood. These are the people with the most experience and the most knowledge regarding this problem. Please remember that my neighbors and I bear the brunt of the homeless problems in this city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Washington neighborhood nominates myself to be an active participant in this public-private partnership to make sure the problem is addressed successfully. We don't want to see another waste of time and another failure as we did with the city's homeless action plan. We need to get tough as nails, as this is a tough problem which requires tough action. Please continue to visit our website, www.cleanupwestsac.com.
Thank you. So we have before us then the consent agenda, which items 3 through 9 with the modifications recommended by the city manager to item 6. So moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Villegas. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 10 is a public hearing to consider 2014 State of California Community Development Block Grant Funding Opportunities.
Good evening. We're here this evening to ask that the City Council consider conducting a public hearing to receive citizen comment on activities for funding with Community Development Block Grant Funds for the coming year, known as CDBG. This is funding that the city can apply to the state to fund activities primarily benefiting low and moderate income residents of West Sacramento. The public hearing this evening by HUD regulation can only receive public testimony. We can't make any funding decisions, but it is an opportunity to allow the residents and organizations serving lower income persons in West Sacramento an opportunity to know that the funding is available and an opportunity to make comments. CDBG funds, as I mentioned, have to be used primarily for low and moderate income persons, and for a few small, in a few instances, can be used for eliminations of slum and blight, and to address urgent needs, which is defined in CDBG as something unexpected like earthquakes or floods. Funding can be used, the state is allowing applications this year of up to $2 million. And the city would be eligible to submit an application in April for activities such as homeownership assistance, rental rehabilitation, owner-occupied rehabilitation, public improvements like water systems, sidewalks, streets, public facilities such as child care centers, homeless shelters, transitional housing, also for public services, which would be youth services, senior services, homeless services, those types of things. We're also allowed to apply for funding for business creation activities, including business loans and assistance to micro-enterprise businesses, which are very low-income owner businesses. The city can apply for up to $100,000 for a planning grant included within the $2 million limit for up to 2 studies. In addition to those activities, for larger business creation and job creation activities, we can apply through a separate funding round called Over the Counter. I'm available for any questions. Should the council have questions?
Mr. Villegas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Luis. Under the, I think it's, let's see, third page of the staff report, potential projects, that fourth bullet, public services. Can you explain a little bit more about, so the funds could be used for that. In the past, they've said that they're not interested in funding them, but now they are. So if we were to be successful in that path, the funds can be used for services in a facility that's ready to go and already identified for homeless services. Is that?
That would be one possible activity, correct? We could apply for funding, but the state does not allow you to apply for funding if you don't already have all the pieces in place that would be required to provide those services. So if it was homeless services, you would need to have a site control. If it was, a youth van, you would have to have the van, those sorts of things.
So is that one that it says potential. Are you going to refine this, or are you going to come back with some preferred or recommended narrowed scope, or what's the?
Our plan was to come back for a second you must hold 2 public hearings. Our plan was to come back in a second public hearing April 2nd in advance of submitting the application on April 11th.
So then so the next go round, it'll be a refined list, or you'll have some preferred recommendations at that point, right? You're not going to.
Yeah, I would expect that staff would have some recommendations. In March, we will take those recommendations to the Housing Advisory Commission and the Economic Development Advisory Commission, and from including their comments, bring recommendations to staff on April 2nd. We're still looking through the funding notice from the state at this time to determine how things will score, because we can't always apply for what we would like because of the state scoring system.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Luis, going back to the potential projects, the Delta Lane affordable housing, we've got an item coming up on item 12 tonight. How does this request impact that? Is it necessary? Is it an integral part of expecting to receive CDBG money for the item 12 financing, or?
I don't think that CDBG is required for that project, but the city will have to come up with some funds for the gap on that project, and CDBG is one of those potential sources. Because it is new construction, CDBG is only limited to off-site infrastructure, so it can only be a small piece. Current estimates are less than $500,000, but it is one piece of a potential funding source for that project. We could either go with the grant funds in this application or program income that we currently have on hand.
Okay, all right.
So, and just so we're clear, the list that's on potential projects that you've indicated, you've been approached by organizations who are interested in these funds. This is not a preliminary staff recommendation. There were several items that came through the strategic planning process that aren't on this list because we just completed that. So this is not a menu from which we are selecting exclusively. Many of these are from third-party organizations that have made requests. So I don't want to get anybody's expectation level up that just because it's the only one in its category that's the one going to go. But on the issue of the offsites for affordable housing, so we're eligible to apply for up to 3 activities in total. Is each of those, say we did offsites for Delta Lane and for Landmark Lofts, is that 2 activities or 1?
Well, I've said before that this should always be done in March because it's like the March brackets for basketball. We cannot do 2 offsite infrastructure projects under the same application. You can only do one of those activities. So you can apply for up to 3. 1 can be on offsite infrastructure. The other 2 would have to be under the other categories.
Okay.
Business assistance or public facilities. However, we could use our program income for 1 and apply for the other. That is an option.
So your business assistance or public facilities, those are 2 examples, but aren't there like 6 other categories or something?
Yes, there's.
Okay.
I don't even remember. There's like 10 categories.
Okay.
And each has its own particular maximum request limit.
Gotcha.
Public services, you can apply for up to 3 public services within that $500,000 cap, and that counts as 1 activity. So, yeah, it gets a little complicated.
Yep. Yes, it does. It gets easier after 13 years, though, right? Or 27. It starts to become clearer. All right. Any other questions of staff at this time? All right. Thank you, Louise. Then we are going to open the public hearing on item 10, and we have 4 requests to speak on this. The first is by Don Bosley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Firstly, I would certainly be remiss if I did not pause for a moment and add our congratulations and thanks to Mr. Villegas for his service from the faith community. One of the photos that is on my desk is a photo of Mr. Villegas and others cutting another ribbon, and that would be the ribbon for the Collings Teen Center 10 years ago. Yet another example of his commitment to youth. We thank you. We're appreciative. I want to call your attention tonight to some other public servants, and those would be the members of the Mercy Coalition. This is a network of churches and faith-based organizations in West Sacramento that have bonded together and come together for the purpose of caring for and helping solve some of the homeless issues that we have out there. And many of us have been involved with Council Members Johanneson's meetings and some of the process going along here. But I want to share with you a little bit of what they've been doing just since September. As your report indicates, we are definitely working on a project proposal for these funds because we have a deep-seated desire to see the homeless genuinely cared for. On September 19th, the faith community learned that the Broderick Christian Center was losing its funding to be able to serve a daily meal. Since that time, in the 5 months since then, the members of the Mercy Coalition have come together and filled that void by providing a daily meal and services with our friends at New Discovery Church providing a distribution point for us on 4th Street. In those 5 months, the Mercy Coalition has averaged more than 300 volunteer hours a week to serve the homeless, cultivated partnerships with 12 churches, 2 food banks, 3 grocery stores, the nonprofit Elica Healthcare, the Collings Teen Center, employees at CalSTRS, the Sacramento Region Community Foundation, and other nonprofits such as Senior Gleaners. That's all happened in 5 months. In addition, there's been a health fair staged, a community Christmas dinner that served more than 200 people. My point to you simply is this, is that the faith community has a great heart and a volunteer base that is very, very eager to play its part in this scenario as it unfolds. As a homegrown son of West Sacramento, that really fires up my heart because that's what we do in our town. We don't take our neighbors and those in need and ship them off to Woodland. We care for them. We do it the right way. There is a right way to do this. We are eager to be your partner in figuring out what that right way is, and we just ask for your consideration and help in that process. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Don. Bill Lowell?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. As we assist lower income people, I think we should have part of this assisting people that need improved access to and from the entry of their homes. Like there's a duplex unit to the north of my place that has 2 rather steep steps, about half as high as my 4 steps were. And I know there's an older lady that uses a walker, and a bus from the little church up there on Merkley Avenue across from the library comes by to pick her up almost daily. She goes up and down those steep steps with that walker, and those are the kind of places I think should have that front door access improved so that she doesn't have to go up and down those stairs, and that would increase the resale value later on of that unit. So it's a long-term investment that's geared to safety, and like I say, it'll improve the resale value. So when they refinance it, why it would prevent accidents from happening, and so I think it's a good investment in more ways than one. Thank you.
Jerry Green? Yes, you have to. Yeah. It's too late. Maybe you didn't fill his card out. Somebody filled it out for you.
Okay. I'm Jerry Green. I'm the pastor of New Discovery Christian Church. We're presently in the building on 4th and F Street in Old Broderick. And we've been in there almost 6 years. And during that time, we've had an increase in ministries towards the homeless and especially to the needy. Our church is about 200, and probably 95% of them have an average income of less than $1,000 a month. So where most churches, when they grow, they have an increase in their budget, where we have an increase in costs. What I wanted to address to you is that we have eager people, eager to serve, and as Dawn was saying, there are 300 hours. I had our church manager that's in charge of the homeless and the food ministry to compile hours with the volunteers, and there's well over 300 hours a week that our people serve in there, making sandwiches and bagging up pizzas, because Little Caesars Pizza drops off, a ministry from Little Caesars Pizza drops off pizza most nights, and we add it to the sack lunches that the other churches provide, and they come together there. And we actually have more people who would volunteer within our own church and the other churches if we had a facility where we could maybe be a daycare center or something for the homeless. But the thing that I think is most valuable is we've been able to change the thinking of a lot of the homeless community into a thinking of getting off of the street, a thinking of that they have worth rather than just looking for another meal. Because we always try to give them some. I mean, we're 7 days a week. We're there. Somebody needs some food. We always have something to feed them. But it's more important that they begin to look at it as if they don't have to be on the street forever. They don't have to be always homeless. And we've been very successful in rehabilitating several, especially mothers with small children and healthier adults that can get a job and become productive again. And all I see is our congregation itself and the Mercy Coalition being able to impact the community even further if we had a facility where we could actually serve better. And we've had good response from the police department and others that, that we are helping to not have places for not just to hang out, but to actually keep them occupied and being a plus to the city rather than a negative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And Carolyn Pearson?
Good evening again. In addition to coming to wish Oscar well, I'm also here as part of the Mercy Coalition to pledge to you that this organization of individuals is committed to working in collaboration with the City of West Sacramento to achieve the goals in the recently approved Homeless Action Plan. The city has come a long way in the last year in terms of recognizing the needs and the impact of homelessness in West Sacramento. It's been said many times that the city is not and should not be in the business of providing services, and rightly so. But we're here to tell you that as the Mercy Coalition, it is our business as members of the various faith-based churches in West Sacramento, and we'd like your support to allow us to do this in a bigger and better way than just caring for the immediate needs of our community's poor and homeless. These CDBG funds can provide us the funds to build a base, a structure, from which we can begin to facilitate a coordinated and thoughtful system of care for people in need. There are so many services being provided in this community right now by individual churches, by community groups, by individuals themselves. We have a tremendously generous and benevolent community, as I'm sure you know. Our project can harness those resources, and with the support and help of Supervisor Villegas, can bring other social and health service resources into West Sacramento to get the folks the help that they need. As the city goes through its CDBG application process, I ask that you provide your support to this project and give us the opportunity to take care of our neighbors in a humane, compassionate way, and in the way that is in the best interest of all of West Sacramento residents. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing on item 10. Return to the council for any further questions or discussion. Villegas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily, I just wanted to just make sure that the recommended action includes part 2, which is providing direction to staff regarding projects considered. And I think part of what you said earlier, there was extensive conversation during the council strategic planning conversations, and I think from that there may come, I think it's part to your point, there may come areas where we want to emphasize in light of what I think the NOFA eventually will sort of reveal itself and tell the world what they're looking for and what you're more likely to be successful in applying for based on, so you just balance that with what I think the council has said there's some need to place some emphasis in certain areas. So I just want to make sure that the motion includes, if it's the appropriate time, that it includes that as part of what I think is the right direction.
All right. I think staff doesn't need a motion. They just need to hear from the council in precisely that way. So I agree. I think the community development block grant funds, any year, given the disposition of the Congress, or even when I was in D.C. last month, the president said, "Look, we're doing everything we can to protect that fund." But by everything that we can, that means it's going to get cut less than some members of the Congress would like to do. So it is likely this is a diminishing source of funds over time, but it's a critical one for a lot of needs in our community, and especially so after the elimination of redevelopment. We don't have any other dedicated funding source. It used to be 20 cents on every dollar in redevelopment was dedicated under the law to help build affordable housing in our community. And to support the work of the Housing Development Corporation and everything else, and that's all gone. So the Community Development Block Grant is really the most significant source of funding that is somewhat discretionary, but is dedicated to at least to the general purposes of providing economic empowerment and equity and social mobility, and just dealing with poverty and with the effects of poverty in our community and elsewhere. So some of the projects like Delta Lane Landmark Lofts, we need to make those investments. They're buildings, and so they don't pull at our hearts as much, but they matter for the folks that live there. Staff's been including this ever since I got elected to the council. This income limits sheet, just to remind us and the community that we're talking about low-income families in our community. We're talking about families who earn, family of four with an income of $60,000. It's not, I mean, it's an expansive definition, but that's what it takes to live and to make ends meet in a community like ours. So the housing is a big part of that. So those projects, the extent that we need to devote resources to the offset infrastructure in order for them to be viable, we have to do. We also have a legal obligation to do that under our Prop 1C grants that funded all the bridge district infrastructure and everything. So we don't have a lot of choice anyway, but we definitely need to make those projects happen. And then a lot of the priorities that were identified at the strategic planning session. I am very moved by the turnout tonight. And very glad. If you've seen our meetings on TV, you've seen we basically have a weekly cowboy of solve homelessness overnight by shipping everybody out of town, arresting them, and then busing them somewhere else, and problem solved. And we know both in our hearts, but also from having taken this issue on for years and years in our community and meeting other council members and mayors and police chiefs around the rest of the country, that doesn't work. And our homeless plan that Mr. Johannesson has played a big role in shaping and shepherding sort of embraces the complexity and the ambiguity and the trade-offs that are involved. And that's the direction that we're in. But it also, I think, it requires voices to be heard in the community in the way that we heard tonight. And voices, I think that I heard a very complex message tonight as well, and a nuanced message that, frankly, I didn't hear as much even a year ago. And I think the collaboration that has occurred has helped to inform that as well. Because we have all of those interests. So our charge is public safety, and our charge is our people. And we have to do both of. We have to be able to walk and chew gum simultaneously. And we have to do what we can for many of the folks that we heard about tonight, folks who want to or could see a possibility of escaping homelessness and need a leg up, need a place, need a few services, need some things to escape that. At the same time, we've got folks who do not want to exit homelessness and have a variety of other challenges and impacts on their neighbors, crime and other things that we have also heard about in deeply compelling stories from folks. And we have to be, our hearts have to be open in the first case, and our police law enforcement policies have to be strong in the second. We have to be able to do both. And just so just to our friends who say just arrest and bust everyone out, we have to remind them how important it is that the message that we heard tonight. It's us that's out on the street. It's not some alien population that's been dropped in West Sacramento. It's us that's out there. But we also have to remind ourselves that there are impacts on the community that other residents have to be protected, and then we have to so enforcement matters too. And particularly for the wide variety, diversity of folks that are in the homeless population, we have to be able to treat them as individuals and treat their needs and their aspirations and their possibilities in a distinct way. And I think I've heard a lot of that tonight, especially in terms of finding a place. That's important. It's as important, I think, for us as it is for folks that we heard tonight. Because when we go do food distributions at a camp that we are trying to clear, it puts us at cross purposes. Even though we want people to eat and you want folks to not be camping illegally, if we don't coordinate that work and there isn't the right place for food distribution to be, both that's safe and for homeless individuals and for their neighbors, and that helps to do exactly what we heard tonight, which is connect folks not just to the meal yes, the meal, but not just to the meal, also to the other services and transitional housing and other things that are available. Not everyone will take advantage, but even if a handful do, we've made a difference. That collaborative learning that I think we've gone through together, and developing the trust and the protocols and the relationships between the coalition and the faith-based community and the police department and our housing team and others is the only way we have any chance of succeeding. It's no guarantee. It's one of the reasons why, none of us go out there and say we are going to end homelessness in 90 days or 1 year or whatever. We appreciate the depth and diversity of the challenge that's before us, because no one else has solved solved homelessness in any other community either. But I know we're all committed to doing what we can. While we're looking for the answer to everything, we will do what we can to make it better, both for homeless individuals and for their neighbors and ours. So I without saying how we'll end up allocating the funds, I really do appreciate both tonight's turnout, the presentations that have been made, and all the work underneath it to try to find real solutions that will work for everybody in this community in an enduring and successful way. So thank you.
Well said.
Just a couple comments, Tina, on some of the stuff that you're asking for. I like the business assistance, especially if we can find a way to create jobs for low-income persons. I really would like to maybe, I think that would be something that is good. The Delta Lane project, I think, is something that I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later tonight, but it's something that needs to get feathered out, and we need to find out if, or at least I do, that the monies that we have spent, and why are we going through all of this all over again? We have a certain responsibility for Prop 1C money. I thought that we had everything pretty much put in place, and I need to know what went wrong. If it's just the state taking away the redevelopment monies, then I understand it. But I think there's really more to it than that. But anyway, we'll find out a little later on tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Christoph, any further comments on item 10? All right, then you have sufficient direction. Item 11 then is consideration of the proposed decision in the matter of Dennis Campanelli in the city of West Sacramento. Mr. Wright.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This agenda item relates to a former city employee who retired from the city as a fire division chief and applied for a disability retirement. At the time he retired, he was assigned to an administrative position. Then city manager Toby Ross, based upon the job description, his job duties, and the medical evidence, denied the disability retirement. This employee appealed. There was a hearing before an administrative law judge held in November, and on January 8th of this year, the judge rendered a proposed decision, which is attached to the staff report. Staff is here tonight asking the council to adopt the ALJ's proposed decision in its entirety. I will answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wright?
Nope.
Any discussion?
Move the item. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson, second by Mr. Villegas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
See the kind of clout you have, Phil?
Item 12 is consideration of purchase option agreement, pre-development loan agreement, and permanent financing commitment letter for the Delta Lane Affordable Housing Development. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening. When the city received its $23 million Proposition 1C grant for infrastructure in the Bridge District, one of the commitments it made associated with that grant was the development of 775 affordable and market rate housing units that were to be built on the Delta Lane Delta Lane development site, which is located at the southeast corner of Tower Bridge Gateway and Grand Street. Pursuant to the Prop 1C grant agreement, the city has until 2019 to complete the Phase 1 units, or the State Department of Housing and Community Development can demand repayment of approximately $6.4 million worth of the grant funds that were attributable to the construction of those units. And in addition, if the city wanted to utilize the site, then since the site was transferred to the city without cost as a housing asset, if it wanted to use it for something else, it would need to be acquired, and there would be a cost associated with that. Since the grant was received, the city has undertaken a number of different actions aimed at moving the project forward. In 2008, the Redevelopment Agency approved an $11.7 million loan to the West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation for the project, and the Housing Development Corporation later brought on Jamboree Housing as its co-general partner in the development. During the time since the grant was awarded, the staff and the developer spent a considerable amount of time sort of wrestling with the tension that exists between the council's understandably high standards for the design of the project on this site, because it's a very strategic site in a very visible location in a key riverfront development area. So the council certainly, justifiably has a high expectation for how the project looks and how it's designed. Yet at the same time, the economic realities of affordable housing are that there's very little funds sometimes to build even an adequate project, much less an excellent one that the council expects. The process has been even further complicated by other factors that were outside of everybody's control, such as the economic crisis of 2008 through 2009, and notably the dissolution of Redevelopment, which ultimately led to the Department of Finance deciding that the $11.7 million loan of tax increment that the Redevelopment Agency had made is not an enforceable obligation and cannot be used for the project. The Successor Agency has some recourse there, and that's still being considered, but in the meantime, staff is focused on finding another way to finance the project with other resources, which has been very challenging. The project that's the subject of the presentation tonight, we think reconciles the design quality that the council was looking for with the financial feasibility that needs to be there in order for the project to actually happen. It's a 77-unit affordable family apartment complex with 4,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. The development has a 5-story frontage along Tower Bridge Gateway and 3- and 4-story buildings on the other sides, all surrounding an interior courtyard that has a play area and some green space for the residents. The developer and the architect are here, and they'll be in a position to answer questions about the design better than I can. So I'm going to focus the rest of my presentation on the recommendations that we make in the report that pertain more to the financing and the land transaction. In broad terms, the actions that are recommended in the staff report are aimed primarily at positioning the developer to submit for tax credits, which are a key component of the financing for the project. There's only 2 rounds of those each year, and the next one, the deadline for that is on March 5th. And there's a number of pieces that need to be in place for an application to be viable. So I'll just summarize the recommendations that we're making, and then I can take questions on those if you have them. The first recommendation is kind of self-explanatory. We're asking that you find that no further CEQA actions are necessary for the project. The second recommendation is we're recommending that the council authorize the mayor or his designee to enter into a purchase option agreement with the developer for the site. And this document will provide the developer with the site control, the evidence of site control that they need for their tax credit application. And the sale price is to be established by an appraisal, which is in process now, and we expect that to come in the range of $25 to $35 per square foot, which would be structured to be paid through a promissory note as opposed to cash. The term on the purchase option is 3 months, which is short, but what we're doing there is the intent is, again, to provide the developer with the evidence of site control that they need for their application, and the expectation is that since the termination of that purchase option actually occurs before the tax credits would be awarded, we'll work with the developer to come back to the council with a purchase and sale agreement that would have kind of the look and feel more of a disposition and development agreement that you're used to seeing on a transaction like this. So that's recommendation number 2. The third recommendation is that the council authorize issuance of commitment letters for the $6.3 million in cash funding that's required, as well as the note for the land. And this is another requirement of the tax credit application, that they need to have commitments for their funding. The actions that we're recommending would commit the city to funding the aggregate amount that we're talking about in the staff report, but we're suggesting that the exact loan amounts and their sources be brought back to the council at a later time, along with the loan documents themselves. The fourth recommendation, we're requesting authority to execute a pre-development loan agreement in the amount of $400,000 to facilitate the developer's continued pre-development work on the site. And this would be not in addition to the 6.3, this is part of the 6.3, but we'd be asking for authority to go forward with that, soon after your approval, because the developer has been advancing funds for a lot of the redesign, a lot of the work that's going on. And it would be unreasonable to expect them to do that indefinitely. In addition, there's more work that needs to be done in order to get the project ready to be financed and constructed. And then finally, the fifth recommendation is it's typical to put this kind of language in here. On these situations, there are frequently times where you need to do an additional document or an additional change to one of the documents, and it's not necessarily mentioned in the staff report, but it's consistent with everything in there, and we want to make sure that we have authority to do those, since there's not time to come back to another council meeting if we left out a detail. So we're asking for authority to make those kind of changes or enter into other agreements that are consistent with the transaction that we're describing in the report. So that's basically the conclusion of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the staff recommendation, and I think the developers also want to speak as well.
Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, John, so what's the source of the 6.3 million? Is it housing set-aside funds of the past? What's the source?
There's a number of sources. It's predominantly housing trust funds, which come from the fees that come in on inclusionary fees. There's that. There's a state grant for $2 million, the Local Housing Trust Fund grant. That's a matching grant that staff obtained.
We had to match that $2 million.
Right, but it was money that we had designated for that purpose anyway. So that was kind of a coup to obtain that. So there's $2 million from there. There's I want to say 2.6 or something like that in round numbers from the Housing Trust Fund. There are a couple of other housing funds that are being folded in. I mean, one thing that can be said here is that by the time phase one is funded, there will be no more housing funds temporarily.
No, this one project.
This one, the phase
is
one
gobbling
is it,
everything up.
Yeah. I mean, that is the case. So phase two is going to be a real challenge, I can say. But we do have housing projects coming in, and there are actions that we're contemplating in terms of changes to the inclusionary housing ordinance that we think will help raise funds that will help us with phase two and projects like that. So the coffers will be emptied temporarily, but we do see, potentially an influx then in the future.
So is one of the main reasons the design of the retail underneath?
I wouldn't know. I think that the retail, no. And I think I want to be careful not to have overstated the impact of the design on the overall thing. I think that the biggest problem was the redevelopment agency had allocated $11.7 million of tax increment that would have been more than sufficient to build the project, build both phases of the project with the other financing sources that are available, and the state took that away. I think that far and away that is the biggest problem, that is the biggest reason this has taken so long, is that complication.
Because as I read through this, you want to be or somebody's going to be repaid by Fund 106 monies. I mean, I was always under the impression that those $106 were going to be for the establishment of new projects. And Delta Lane is an old project as far as the council's concerned, and we've been working on it for quite a while now. So the 106 fund was going to be used for some projects in Southport, or things on the other side of the barge canal, or South River Road. There were new projects that were coming in, and we had this fund that we had created that really didn't have a lot of money, just didn't generate a lot of money, certainly didn't generate the money that we were receiving from the pass-through on the redevelopment agency. But at the same time, it was something. And we could start to use those dollars to further develop other parts of the community. So are you taking the $106 now from Fund 106 to pay for Delta Lane issues?
No, the intent here is definitely not to change the philosophy that underlies the use of those funds. What we're trying to do is, because of the requirements of some of the funding sources, we're not in a position to commit them by name. Because, for example, there's an environmental review that needs to be done before that specific funding source, in this case CDBG, can be brought to bear on the project. But at the same time, we're asking you to make a commitment in an aggregate amount. So, if we're trying to be open about the fact that if the funding sources that we have planned do not come together properly, that little margin, that little piece that we're short would need to come from another source, because that commitment is still real. But this is certainly not a philosophical shift in terms of the use of Fund 106, although that is, if we come up short on the other funds, that is a likely place that we would look. But that would come back to you at a future time when we bring the loan agreements back to you.
Earlier in the analysis that I was reading, it says the actions recommended in the report will provide immediate funding of $400,000 loan to facilitate the work necessary to ensure that the developer is ready to proceed when the credits are hopefully awarded in June of 2014.
Right.
What if they aren't?
There's, if they're not, there's another round in July. So the expectation would be that they would apply again. And basically, when you look at, if you have a timeline and you've got the 2019 deadline to have these constructed, there's basically 4 cycles, including this one in March, that they have the opportunity to apply for and still have time to construct the project and have it in place by the deadline, which that sounds like a lot of time, but if you consider that it takes probably 2 years from the time the credits are received until the project is constructed, it's getting a little skinny. But the reality is, if we don't get it this time, they can still apply. There's 3 more cycles that they can apply for. So the plan B is to apply again. And sometimes, high-scoring projects still take 2 or 3 rounds to get funded. So the plan is to apply and keep applying.
Okay.
Are other questions at this time? All right, then let's hear from Michael Massey with Jamboree, and then Paul Clark.
Fucking way to run a ship.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Michael Massey. I'm the Housing Development Director of Jamboree Housing Corporation. Jamboree is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to improve California's communities through the development of affordable housing and the provision of resident services. And we're very happy to be here at long last. A lot of work has brought us to this point, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm happy to be here. I've also brought my senior project manager, Vicky Ramirez, who's working on it, as well as our architects. We're here enthusiastically and available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Paul Clark from the HDC.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Congratulations, Mr. Villegas.
Thank you very much.
We will miss you. Just wanted to say that we are very pleased to be a partner in this project with Jamboree. The reason Jamboree is involved is that this is a project beyond what the HDC has done historically in terms of complexity and size. And we're sort of learning at their knee, and it's been a good experience. And we think the project will be one that meets the high standards of West Sacramento. Wanted to point out that in our portfolio of affordable housing in West Sacramento, it's not competing on cheap rents, but we compete based on the quality and the well-managed properties that we have and offer rents at a fair price. Most of our tenants make 50% of the area median income or less, but still 80% of them are employed. And the other 20% are primarily people on fixed incomes like Social Security or something like that. Also, I wanted to point out that as the staff report mentions, it's contemplated that there will be some repayment of these city funds. And as opposed to some other cities further to the west, the HDC has repaid over $350,000 of loans from the city in the past 10 years. And we expect that unlike other cities where these funds are never repaid, that this project will repay some of those fundings. It's not a lot of repayment, but it is repayment to some degree. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll return to the council. I mean, this is, it's a good project. I mean, the situation is awful. I think what's actually remarkable is that we're still here. I mean, we took a gigantic hit, a fatal blow from the state on the redevelopment piece. There's there's no reason to believe that this would have been we'd even be back with this project at all. We have to do a project like this. So given both our obligations, well, especially our obligations under 1C, I think we might take a different approach otherwise. But we need to deliver the project. By that same token, part of what I want to be sure of, because once we do this, we'll be on the project, and so our ability to continue to review it. I don't want to come back. I don't want to be back in 6 months. Well, you're already in for $7.8 million, and it turns out it's short $300,000. Or we can only make this work if you give us the entire street for street parking. Right? I do not want to go through any of that again on this project. So since this is not a typical land use application, because this is a financing application, but it's setting ourselves up for a point where we will be fully committed. We need to get those absolute assurances. If it's not solid, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested in getting a position where we're making any further compromises on design, street level activation, because this is an incredibly important location, right? And so it has to be correct. So the design, I think, is good, but I just think I don't want to be back with additional money requests or compromises in terms of the project itself. I'd rather, if we're going to do that, I'd rather just pull the plug today and face the consequences on 1C. I do have a question. So all these renderings refer to Grand Street. We don't have such a street, do we? I mean, it's Garden Street that is the street that extends into the Bridge District. So I have a question about that. And the second is the phasing, because I've mentioned this to Mr. Laurel previously about the same project, that if any phase results in the closure of Risky prior to the opening of Garden, we have a problem. We already have too few accesses across that plane of the city, and 3rd Street and 5th Street in particular, but 5th Street's awful, as everyone knows. But 3rd and Garden aren't a whole lot better. So closing off one more access in the absence of being able to open up Garden is a major problem. And so the site plans here show the street being closed, at least as part of Phase 2, if not as part of Phase 1. So I want to get some clarity on what the intention is here.
So with respect to the question about the name Grand Street, that actually occurs with Phase 2 of the Bridge District specific plan. So what is named Garden right now at the terminus of West Capitol Avenue and Tower Bridge Gateway, ultimately that does get renamed to Grand when it is extended all the way to the river.
Okay.
And Grand ends where the Bridge District Grand Plaza would be on the river. So that's the connection to downtown.
Okay. And then the closure issue?
The closure issue, with respect to Phase 1, I don't think there's a plan to close Risky. Yeah, that occurs with Phase 2. And that too gets resolved. We have a plan to resolve that connectivity issue and that access issue with the construction of Casey.
Of what?
Casey Street.
Which one is that? Where's Casey Street?
That's the street that can, once we've kind of resolved the crossings with Union Pacific, Casey is the one that comes in right near Ballpark.
Where does it come from?
Grand.
Wait a second now.
I wish I had that exhibit to show. And I don't know if we can pull it up from anything we have.
Is it an exhibit in our packet? The first one?
Yeah, Casey is one of
Oh,
the.
I see.
Casey is one of the solutions.
Oh, but that requires that Risky stay open. I see, because the renderings have even that portion of, well, I'm sorry, what is currently Delta Lane closed off before you could get to Casey.
All right, what I really need is my Bridge District entire specific plan street grid. I don't have it. Yeah, it's not a large enough picture here. If you want to belabor on something else, I can run right over the hall and grab the Bridge District street grid.
Are there other questions?
All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, Mr. Johansson, Mayor Pro Tem Johansson. Sure. I actually would prefer the planning director be here when you do that, in case she doesn't agree. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Johansson? Yeah, she'll come back, so hopefully.
All right. Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think this is a great role for HCD. I mean, doing a project like this, and we're seeing a lot of other cities are really, after redevelopment, are unable to even produce a single unit of affordable housing. And I think the timing is really good. If we have the entertainment and sports complex go in, we have the Marriott go in, we're going to have a lot of folks that are service workers, and we need this type of housing. We've got, of course, a housing project that's going in the Bridge District anyway. But also it shows, when the city invests in this, even though it is putting money in, even though it could be, possibly having a better return on some other project, it may not be repaid all the money, but the city is getting non-financial benefits, and I think the staff have done a good job in laying that out. Enhancing the streetcar development, for example, this is right where the streetcar will go. We need to have bodies that will be able to ride that thing, and this certainly would help support that. The design, I think, is good in terms of having the visual sight coming off of Tower Bridge and coming into this place. Having the availability of retail at the bottom floor, I think, is going to help energize this. So I'm totally supportive of this project. I'm looking forward to being implemented.
Oh, got it.
I need to turn it around so that Martha's.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, the main question is timing, because I would not be supportive of closing Risky until either the KC or the Grand connection is made. Because we're seeing the amount of traffic using this basic corridor is increasing and the number of options are decreasing. So I'm not immediately worried about it because phase 2, nobody knows how to pay for. So it's not like it's going to happen because I miss a meeting one day. Somebody's going to approve it and it's going to occur. But I want to telegraph or put in our agreements that we're clear that that the closure is not occurring until this, one of those two elements is open. Other questions or discussion? All right. Yeah, I all the ancillary benefits are good. I think our biggest issue on streetcar is going to not be building any more 3-story units. I mean, we can't continue to build. This is the lowest density we can build within a quarter mile of a streetcar stop anymore. I mean, it's just this. So I hope we're not. Again, we cannot come back in 6 months and say, hey, it turns out 5 stories is just too expensive. 3 stories is really the sweet spot in terms of the construction cost. No. No, if that's even in anybody's head, I will give up whatever millions of whatever we have to fight on Prop 1C. I would vote to give up in order to stop that from happening. So Jamboree is a great company. HDC has been a great partner of ours. So I'm not worried about that specifically. I just don't want. I've been through enough development projects where circumstances have changed. Or folks play bait and switch, and I just do not want to be in that position with this project because we're already so far over the line. Everyone is, all the partners are, but we're already so far over the line in terms of its capacity, and it's just such a critical piece of property and also a critical project for the city's future. So, all right, anything else? All right, then we have a recommendation before us with the direction that's been given.
I would move the recommended action.
All right, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Villegas. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, thank you. Thanks both to all the teams. That brings us to the council calendar, Mr. Richardson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to point out this is our last meeting of the month, and then at the last day of the month, we'll be celebrating the opening of the Jerome D. Berry Park. That'll be at 10 o'clock. And we meet again on March 5th.
All right, any questions on the calendar? City manager report?
Mr. Tuttle sends his good wishes and wanted to wish Mr. Villegas good luck in his new position.
He's home watching the meeting.
I think he's streaming at home.
The BCC.
The Code of Appeal, the Board of Appeals one's not as important as the court. Okay, city attorney report. Staff directions from members of the council. And then we actually do have future agenda item requests. I have one it's in the packet, and it's a follow-up from our strategic planning retreat discussion last year around the 25th anniversary. We had a set of stuff we wanted to do, not all of which, was it last year or the year before? Not all of which we got to, partly because we changed city managers midstream, spent a good portion of that year on the recruitment and the selection of the city manager. So I'm requesting that we move forward with some of the historic namings that were associated with that period in the city's history in potentially in 3 ways. One is the designation of the Pioneer Bluffs Bridge as the Mike McGowan Bridge. Second is the designation of the Bright Bend water plant as the George Christoph Water Treatment Plant. And for those who don't know, George Christoph, well, Mr. Christoph would know, but George Christoph was one of the key players in the construction of that the lead up for that plant, but also the securing of the city's water supply and infrastructure as a long-term leader and the East Yellow Community Services District Board of Directors before we became a city. And then finally, to consider at a later date recommendations of a subcommittee of the ad hoc subcommittee of the council, which I would suggest would be me and Mr. Christoph, that would bring forward a more complete sort of 25th anniversary set of recommendations in recognition of that period. Our existing process for naming works for normal small parks and that sort of thing, but because of that we're not that old of a city, there are still some people who had large historic contributions to the city's founding period, like Mr. McGowan, who just have not had the good sense to move on out of this world. So I think in this particular instance, it makes sense for us to do a little more thoughtful look at, okay, who were the key figures of that period, and how might we acknowledge them rather than wait for applications to come randomly through our normal Parks Commission process. So that would be the request to agendize those items at a future date if the council would agree.
Yeah, it's just pretty humbling to see your father's name there, and certainly thank you and staff for whatever work you're doing to bring this thing together.
Okay, if there's no objection, then we'll do that at a future date, and it's staff dependent in terms of workload and whatever. So, all right, thank you. Then is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Oscar Villegas and seconded by Mr. Christoph that this meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. It's not debatable.